It is 7:02, and I am reconvening to open session and calling to order the regular Board of Education meeting for Indian Prairie School 204 on Monday, July 7th, 2025. Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Karubas.
Here.
Mr. Rising.
Here.
Ms. Deming.
Present.
Ms. Donahue.
Here.
Ms. Jane.
Here.
Ms. Fosdick.
Here.
And Ms. Gintz.
Here.
We have a quorum. Ms. Fosdick, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next regular board meeting will be held on Monday, August 4th. We have 2 board salutes today. Ms. Gintz.
City of Naperville Teen Art Selection Program. The board salutes the following Neuqua Valley art students: Avani Agarwal, Jumana Januwala, Soha Javid, Olivia Mancha, and Annie O'Boyle, whose artwork was chosen to decorate several of the City of Naperville's streetlight controller boxes. These students responded to a call for teen artists earlier this spring. Their creative designs will transform ordinary utility boxes into beautiful public art that brightens the community and leaves a lasting impression. Congratulations to these talented art students.
Mr. Rising.
2025 Cyber Mission National Finalist. The board salutes Scullin Middle School 7th graders Sophia Hackford and Tricia Hammer-Wayshaw, along with their science teacher and team advisor, Aaron Miller, for being selected as national finalists in the Cyber Mission competition, ranking among the top 20 teams in the nation. Competing as the Allergen Avengers, the team developed Safe Strips, an innovative testing strip designed to detect common food allergens and help individuals with food allergies safely identify what they can eat. I'm still blown away at top 20 teams in the nation. Congratulations to the students and their advisor on this amazing achievement.
So let's have an applause for both of those great accomplishments. All right, we have no public comment tonight, so we're going to move to the consent agenda and superintendent report. Dr. Talley.
Ms. Donahue, members of the board, and the Indian Prairie community, summer is high season for us as we prepare for the start of the new school year. School administration is in the middle of hiring new teachers and ensuring that all positions are filled. Our new administrators have already started and have hit the ground running. As you traverse across our district, you will see a lot of construction. We are spending $40 million this summer on a myriad of construction work thanks to the passage of our Safer, Stronger 204 bond referendum. I have tried to document some of the work through my Twitter X account and send pictures out as often as I can. From the secured vestibules to the new flooring to work at Waubonsie and Neuqua Valley and other schools, we have a lot about which we can be happy as all parts of the district are seeing some work done this summer. I want to thank Mr. John Robinson, Director of Building and Grounds, and his team of Ken Swalwell and Richard Sear for all of their work in overseeing this work and making sure it is done on time. I want to remind parents about the importance of registering your students for school sooner rather than later. Staffing at our schools is based upon registration. We do not give teacher allocations to a school until the numbers in the schools reflect the need. Those numbers are tied directly to registrations. Finally, before I turn the meeting back to the board, I would ask that the Board of Education approve the appointment of Ms. Michelle Schaubaker as Director of Student Services. She is filling a position that was vacated. Ms. Schaubaker is coming to us from Ridge Family Center for Learning in Elk Grove Village, where she was the principal. She has also served as an assistant principal and a director of early childhood. Most importantly, she is a parent in our district with 2 young men who graduated from Neuqua Valley. We are very pleased to welcome her as an Indian Prairie School District employee, and she's here with her family tonight. And I'll now turn the meeting back to Ms. Donahue.
So I need a motion to approve Michelle Schotbaker as Director for Student Services as presented.
I'll make a motion that the Board of Education approve Michelle Schotbaker as Director of Student Services as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Rising.
Yes.
Ms. Deming.
Aye.
Ms. Fosdick.
Yes.
Mr. Karubas.
Yes.
Ms. Gintz.
Yes.
Ms. Donahue.
Yes,
And Ms. Jane.
Yes.
the motion is approved. Welcome to the district.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm very excited about this. Yes. So I have my partner, Scott, and my two boys, as Dr. Telly said, Nicholas and Jack, who graduated from NEQA. They are Graham and Crone and NEQA products. And so we moved here in 2007 and couldn't have been more pleased with the education that both boys received. And I am super excited to be on the other side now, helping to serve in the capacity for other families within the community. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank
Welcome.
you. Welcome.
Shorter commute, too, I'm sure.
All right, and now I need a motion for approving consent agenda items E through T.
I would like to interrupt because I want to pull a few of these items. And I'm a little disorganized.
I think it's J and I.
Yeah, so I'd like to pull
Or
J,
No.
L, and Q. So
So let's, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda items A through I.
Move that the board approve agenda items A through I as presented.
I second.
Any discussion? Okay, Michelle, will you please?
Ms. Fosdick.
Yes.
Ms. Jane.
Yes.
Mr. Karubas.
yes.
Ms. Gintz.
Yes.
Mr. Rising.
Yes.
Ms. Donahue.
Yes,
And Ms. Deming.
Aye.
the motion passes. So now I need an approval for a motion for K, M, N, O, P, R, S, T.
I move that the Board of Education approve consent agenda item K, also M through P, also R through T.
Okay,
Second.
any discussion? Okay, Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Karubas.
Yes.
Ms. Deming.
Aye.
Ms. Gintz.
Yes.
Mr. Rising.
Yes.
Ms. Fosdick.
Yes.
Ms. Donahue.
Yes,
And Ms. Jane.
Yes.
motion passes. All right,
I move that the Board of Education approve consent agenda item J.
do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion.
So I pulled this item because I want to just make a point and make sure that it's clear. We are asking for a school improvement plan for two schools, Brookdale and Longwood. And this is kind of standard practice. It is required by federal law, state law, and our policy. I think it's important to know that we aren't singling out these schools among the other schools. We are supplementing some of our services, that our services are substantially comparable across all the schools in the district. The services that we provide across the district are, there's equivalent among the schools. And another point I want to make sure is that we're providing an equal opportunity for all of our students across all of our schools. So, Mr. Superintendent, are we providing an equal opportunity for all of our students across all of our schools, including Brookdale and Longwood?
The reason we are approving Brookdale and Longwood is because they are targeted schools. That is why they're being brought separately as opposed to all the other schools. So I just want that to be explained. We did this last year. We will have to do this next year as well with these two schools. Both schools do receive additional funding from the state for projects that we do at those schools because they are targeted.
So are we providing an equal educational opportunity for our students at all of our schools?
The answer is yes.
Thank you.
I also would clarify that performance, why we have to have these improvement programs for those two schools, it's a 3-year requirement, yes. And so this would be the second year. So it's 3 years is by law or by policy or whatever. So all right. Any other discussion? Okay, Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Karubas?
Yes.
Mr. Rising?
Yes.
Ms. Fosdick?
Yes.
Ms. Gentz?
Yes.
Ms. Jane?
Yes.
Ms. Demme?
Aye.
And Ms. Donahue?
Aye. The motion passes. Now I need a motion to approve item L, consent agenda item L.
I move that the board approve consent agenda item L.
Second.
Discussion.
So I pulled this item because I'm struggling with kind of the language and what we've been are proposing to do with this transfer. This wasn't a change that was recommended by press. We're deviating from press. For those that don't know, press is a subscription service that's provided by the Illinois Association of School Boards that tries to keep our policies in line with current law. So this is more of a discretionary item. So I didn't get enough information where I felt like this warranted deviating from press, but I'm obviously not aware of our current practices across all the districts. So I'd like to hear more from administration on this one.
I think we should describe what item L is.
Item L is regarding student assignment and inter-district transfers where parents are seeking a transfer to move their student from school A to school B. Our current policy is not the practices that we actually use, and hence the reason why we needed to make a change. We worked with our general counsel on this in order to find something that's more accurate to what we actually do here. So, for example, in our current policy, it tells for parents to contact the superintendent about a transfer. When in reality, they should never contact the superintendent. It has to go to the committee that we have and apply for it from that standpoint. Another thing is, in our current policy, we talk about grades K-8, and then we talk about high school. In the revised policy, we're actually just combining everything together as one, because there's no reason to have two separate practices that we're doing. And so this new policy is more in line with what we are actually doing in our district as opposed to what we are not doing.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I had the same concern Mr. Karubas did, but to what Dr. Talley said, there was a lot of high school language in there before, and I like that we made it more broad across all K through 8 and pre-K as well. I also like that we brought into this under extraordinary circumstances, which wasn't there before, because this is not an easy thing to do, and we should not be just granting them at the sole discretion of the designator who decides this. So I like that we spelled that out a little better and made it more limiting and what it's limited to. So, but I also understand Mr. Karubas's point that it wasn't something that was necessarily legislative or school code driven, because that changed. But this is more in line to what we have been doing as a district.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Karubas,
Yes.
Ms. Gentz,
Yes.
Ms. Donahue,
Yes.
Ms. Jane,
Yes.
Ms. Deming,
Aye.
Ms. Fosdick,
Yes.
and Mr. Rising.
Yes.
The motion passes. Now I need a motion for consent to agenda item Q.
I make a motion that the board approve consent agenda item Q.
Second.
Discussion.
This is a grouping of board policies that are being updated because of recommendations by our subscription service press. I've got concerns, questions about the policy 7:250 that deals with student support services. Mainly it relates to notification of communication to the parents about some of the services that we're providing. I'm not sure if we want to, can we take that offline and do that at another meeting? I don't think I had enough time to kind of fully vet this with administration before kind of voicing some of my questions and concerns here. The July 4th holiday interfered with some of that. Is there any urgency to approve this 7:250 at this meeting, or can it be delayed till next meeting?
It may be delayed. It may be delayed.
All right, then I'd like to
Take a motion to delay or
approve everything in Q.
7:20.
Exactly.
250.
Right, and then maybe I can take my discussion with administration later and approve that at the next meeting.
So do you take back your motion for item Q then, or you modify it to
Yeah.
remove that piece?
So I am going to make a motion to amend. You gonna be able to pull this off? I make a motion to approve consent agenda item Q, except for board policy 7:250.
I'll amend my original second and second that.
Okay, is there a discussion? Any concerns about pulling that, or, okay. All right, Michelle, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Rising,
Yes.
Mr. Karubas,
Yes.
Ms. Gentz,
Yes.
Ms. Donahue,
Yes,
Ms. Fosdick,
Yes.
Ms. Deming,
Aye.
and Ms. Jane.
Yes.
the motion is approved. That's probably more discussion on consent agenda than I've ever had on this board. I would like to add too, for people that want to go back and look at the consent agenda, there was a couple important things in there, and not that it's always important, but I'll point out our new board goals were just approved formally, that were worked on in June. And second, there is a report on the giving report for the district, which is always an incredible view of generosity of our community and our parents. And I would urge people to take a look at how much is contributed to our district and how thankful we are for that opportunity and for that giving. So thank you. All right. So now we move on to our next agenda item is our action items. Getting a motion and a second to approve board member Mark Rising to submit an application for consideration to serve as state officer in the Illinois Association of School Boards, and if selected, to serve in that capacity with the support of this board.
I make a motion to approve
Mark Rising's application to serve as a state officer with the Illinois Association of School Board Association, if elected, to have the support of IPSD School Board 204.
I second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, so background. I talked to most of you last year that I was considering doing this. The application is due August 1st. I did not do it last year. I plan on doing it this year. What I found out as part of the application, that the board, my local board, has to approve me doing this and vote on it, because I need to get your approval, because if I do get picked as an officer at the state level, that could pull me away from duties, or I might miss a board meeting here or there. Obviously, I'd try to schedule around that, but they just like my local board to approve that, and then, so there has to be a formal vote, and then I also need the president to sign a piece of paper with that motion that our board approved that. So, thanks.
Any other comments or good luck, Mark?
Yes.
So, all right, Michelle, will you please call the roll?
You're recusing yourself from Ms. voting? Deming. Aye. Ms. Fosdick.
Yes.
Mr. Karubas.
Yes.
Mr. Rising.
I'm going to say yes because I want it to be a 7-0 vote.
Ms. Donahue.
Yes.
Ms. Jane.
Yes.
And Ms. Gibbs.
Well, I'm considering it. Yeah, I'm considering just saying no, just to be obstinate, but
Is
yes.
there bribery involved? No.
Is that it?
You're lucky I did.
Okay, the motion passes. All right, Mark.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, we will now have a presentation from Dr. Lewis Lee and Montrine Johnson regarding formative and summative assessment grading.
All right, President Donahue, members of the board, Dr. Talley. Tonight I'm joined by Montrine Johnson, current assistant principal for curriculum and instruction at Waubonsie Valley High School, who is celebrating 50 years, their 50th anniversary this year. So we are also here to provide information and discussion with the ongoing work of our district's grading committee. And tonight we'll be focusing just on the topic of formative summative assessment grading. As soon as we talk about grading, many educators' hairs go up and battle lines are drawn. But what I think you'll find tonight in our discussion is just some great work that's been taking place and really evolving how we can make sure that all of our grading practices are consistent, are equitable, and really lead to proficiency for all of our students. What we like to do first is provide an outline of some of the topics that we'll uncover tonight, some of these discussion points that will occur during our presentation. First will be our Portrait of a Graduate Learning Framework. About 7 years ago, this board approved our Portrait of a Graduate Core Competencies, 6 of them. And along with that Portrait of a Graduate work, as part of the strategic plan, we were tasked with actually creating a Portrait of a Graduate Learning Framework. How do we make this come alive? Not just in the daily lives of our students, but as educators, and also make it systemic in everything that we're going to do. So we're going to have a brief discussion about that. Then we want to talk a lot about our grading steering committee. Who is that made up of? What are they tasked with? We'll go to the 7. We affectionately call them the 7 subcommittees that are tasked with actually carrying out the work from the grading steering committee. From there, we'll really jump in through our formative and summative subcommittee discussion. And then finally, on the tail end of this, we do plan on talking about a recommended practice that we'll share with this board, along with a fall pilot to measure that practice. And finally, just talk about a proposed draft timeline of what this may look like going forward. Speaking of timeline, next month we'll be in the 4th year of our district strategic 5-year plan. It's hard to imagine that it's gone by that quickly. And when we look at this strategic plan, the board in August of 2022 approved this strategic plan that has 4 priorities. And why these 4? Because this board, and we recognize as administration, that they align directly with our portrait of a graduate work. And that's now going to be developed into our portrait of a graduate learning framework. These 4 priorities really encapsulate who we are. In fact, when you go to our website that's just been updated and you click on the About Us, the first thing that lights up is the district strategic plan. That's really what lights our way and what we're trying to do. We really want to be what this plan calls us to do, which is to inspire all of our students to achieve their greatest potential. So tonight, we're just going to focus heavily on priority 1, which is that focus on student development. Embedded, as you are aware, within each priority, there are different objectives and strategies. The objective for this priority that we're also looking at is objective 2, which just talks about students, providing students with a high-quality instruction, curriculum instruction to help meet or exceed standards that on demonstrated or greater than predicted growth on standardized assessments. Some of the key wording in those strategies that we've highlighted really are the things that jump out on what we're going to talk about tonight. In strategy 1, again, that portrait of a graduate lens. In strategy 2, we continue that lens when we're talking about equity, student achievement, student engagement, and finally, making sure that our instructional practices are aligned through that lens of what we're doing on a daily basis. Also, this board has been very busy. In February of earlier this year, you adopted a resolution to support Vision 2030. And Vision 2030 is what joins several statewide organizations across the state of Illinois to help support and further the purpose of public education. And so tonight, this presentation focuses on 2 tenets of Vision 2030. The first one is that future-focused learning that you see, again, highlighting that curriculum and instructional flexibility. So when we're talking about grades, that is definitely what we're talking about in trying to create that flexibility that needs to take place across our district. And then also shared accountability, and that comes from the actual type of assessments that we are giving within the classroom, that our educators are providing to make sure our students continue to be on that path that is laid out towards college and career. So when you look at this graphic, this really shows a lot of different things that are happening in our district. Some of them just with recent, where recently you received a presentation about our portrait of the educator work. Some things have been standardized within our district for many years, our work with CASEL, our culturally relevant instruction. We are in the second part of Believe, Belong, Be 204 that we'll be talking about later this year. And at the center of that, purposely and literally, is that portrait of a graduate learning framework. Now, when we look at how we're going to be able to support all of these, we look at our MTSS work, our multi-tiered system of support. And traditional MTSS frameworks, what they might focus just on one domain, where, for example, they might just look at reading. When we talk about that I that's in front of the MTSS, that's talking about an integrated multi-tier system of support, and we're looking at several factors that were within each domain, and those factors focus heavily on research-informed practices, integration of key practices, maybe behavioral skills that might occur within a lesson. And why, again, do we focus on academic and behavior? Because we know that the needs are definitely interconnected. Behaviors impact access to instruction, and we also know that if we don't have quality instruction, that can definitely influence behavior. So the learning framework, the professional portrait of a graduate learning framework that we're talking about, we want to begin building aligns all these areas of practice that are already occurring across our district. But they're different roadmaps that we're trying to bring along one road so that we can all get there going the same way so that we don't get lost, because we all know that there is more than one way to get to a destination. Just as our priorities have been identified and aligned within the strategic plan, so is our MTSS work seeking to align what our daily practices are both in and out of the classroom. So all of that really leads to what you see is our vision statement. And when you read that, again, what jumps out to me, what should jump out for administration and our students is that commitment that every student can excel academically, socially, emotionally, and behaviorally. And those, again, are all things that align with what our strategic plan has set out to do, what our portrait of a graduate, those 6 core competencies on a daily basis, and making that come alive within our classrooms by our educators. That was a mouthful. And as you kind of take all of that in, it really sets the foundation for everything else that we're talking about. When we talk about grading, as I kind of said earlier, a lot of different emotions come up, a lot of different concerns come up, a lot of different practices come up. And so it's important that we're grounded in the foundation of what is it that we're trying to do and why are we doing it. And all of that needs to be tethered to our Portrait of a Graduate Learning Framework. And so our steering committee went through everything that we just talked about. And the members are really important because these are the people that are going to be guiding these 7 subcommittees. And the members are a cross-section of our district. They're building administrators. There are actual educators, leadership from our association, and then also cabinet leadership. And they've been meeting for quite some time, and they've actually started in the spring of last year. And through all that work, they've really been dedicated towards reaching the goals that you'll see shortly in our why and vision statement. And speaking of our why, we know that grading practices have many challenges associated with them. And so it's really important from before we started anything that we really developed what is our why and making sure that that's communicated consistently over and over. Every time we get off track, every time we are questioning why did we even start this, it's important that our why statement really tethers us to the importance of this work. So what is our why? As you read through that, you're going to see, again, that commitment to not only inspiring our students, but it's that lens of equity, standards, academic growth, achievement, and SEL, and that alignment with our Portrait of a Graduate work. We're not trying to create something new here. We know that many of our teachers are dedicated to this work, and they're already doing this. And as we talked about earlier, this is something that Dr. Talley and I have had many discussions on in terms of how we can make sure that we're more consistent across our district so that a student from the original Valley has the same type of grading experience as a student in Mattia Valley. And so our why is always going to be grounded through that lens. So our grading steering committee, if you're a visual person, right, what does this look like? And I talked about the 7. And this 7 here is exactly what I'm going to turn over to Montrine to talk a little bit more about.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lee. We call these critical components of grading the Big 7. There are also challenges when it comes to grading when you're trying to move to more equitable grading practices. So looking at that student behavior, so we have these 7 committees, retakes, reassessments, and the redos. Also looking at students with 504s, IEPs, and the multilingual students as well. Standards-based grading, especially in our elementary schools, that's really important, but also across the district. Just the component of the 0 and how the 0 is impacted into the grade. And then formative and summative assessments. That's actually the committee that I co-facilitated, and I'll speak more or dive a little deeper with that work. And then also the role of homework and extra credit into the grading practices. So when we were looking at the grading steering committee, we felt like these 7 critical components of grading really needed to be addressed if we were going to move to a more equitable grading system or practices. So those are the Big 7, as we call them. And we had 7 subcommittees, and we really made sure to ground our work in the research, looking at that local, national, and state data. So looking within our district, looking in neighboring school districts, and looking at the educational research, and looking at what other areas are doing to be more equitable when it comes to grading. Also looking at examples of practice. We looked within our district, and we'll speak to that a little bit later, in some of our schools, and then also in our neighboring school districts. So we looked at, District 203, District 308, Plainfield School District as well, to see those practices that are in place. And then we also engaged in these subcommittees in professional dialogue to discuss possible recommendations that we could bring back to administration. So we really had these great conversations, and our ultimate goal was to remain grounded on our why, that vision, and to make sure that it was grounded in equity, and so that we could bring a recommendation back to the larger grading steering committee. So that was really what guided our work and standardized our practice for each of those 7 committees. And those 7 committees, they were co-facilitated by an administrator and an educator. So I co-facilitated the Formative Summative subcommittee with my counterpart, and that's Kathy Malone. She's a 6th grade math teacher. She also teaches history. So the 2 of us, we led that subcommittee, and we really approached it from a neutral standpoint. We wanted to have these conversations and allow staff members to engage in this meaningful dialogue. And we looked at some of those practices so that our committee could look at the research and start to have some of those conversations. We wanted to look at the different school districts in the area, those examples of practice, which was really important to us, and then make sure that people felt safe. And what came out of those conversations, and we had representation from elementary, middle, and high school, is this desire to have more consistency. As Dr. Lee mentioned, making sure that a student who was, having an experience at Waubonsie Valley High School had the exact same experience grading-wise at Mattia Valley. And those were just some of the examples that we saw across the district. And then we were able to come to consensus and provide a recommendation to the Grading Steer Committee that focused on equity, and it also aligned really to that proficiency and mastery, which aligns with our district mission and vision as well. And the first thing that we did coming out of that was we felt like it was really important to define formative assessments and summative assessments. So we looked at the latest educational research, and the consensus that we came to is that a formative assessment is low stakes. That is practice, that it allows a student, it could be a range of evaluative processes, and we have some examples there. And it is used by educators to monitor and support student learning, but to give that ongoing feedback. It lets students know exactly where they are, what their strengths are, and the areas in which they need to grow. And so those are some examples there. I won't necessarily read all of them, but something as simple as an entrance or an exit slip. Even in the elementary school classroom, you see Kahoots, various forms of low-stakes formative assessments. And then that summative assessment, making sure that the formative was aligned to the summative. So they're practicing and getting ready for that larger exam or that larger assessment, and it's a culminating evaluation. And it's measuring that knowledge and skills, and again, looking at the proficiency and the mastery, which was really important, and that reflects the student's overall achievement. So it could be at the end of a unit, at the end of a quarter, at the end of a semester. It could be a project, Socratic seminars. So we just felt like as a committee it was really important for us to have a consistent working definition that we could share with staff. So that's some of the work that came out of our subcommittee. And where we landed is, based on the research and that collaboration, we felt like it was really important to have that summative assessment at 80%, and then formative assessments representing that 20%. So that practice and feedback weighing less than the actual mastery assessment itself, where students could demonstrate what they've learned, what they know, and what they're able to do. And our rationale behind that is It is really grounded in equity when you're looking at, it promotes equity by looking at the students' mastery of the content and the skills. So when students know exactly what they're responsible for, the standards, the skills, the learning targets, and then they have that ongoing feedback, it allows them to understand what that grade actually represents and where they are in relation to that. So we felt like that was really important, as opposed to relying on external factors that may disproportionately impact students, things like homework or behavior. So looking at that proficiency and the mastery was really key. We also felt like it was really important to look at or examine the summative assessments, that they provide that clear feedback on students' proficiency and allowed them to know exactly where they are. It also allowed teachers to determine their targeted instruction, so they could differentiate, and then there's interventions. If we're all relying on these summative assessments, then we can work together to make sure that students are receiving the interventions that we need, and that helps with determining what those interventions are. And it also helps with things like recommending classes from, the middle school to the high school. We felt like that was really important. And then looking at those learning outcomes, again, it just provides that consistency and transparency as well. And it makes it easier for a student to understand and for parents to understand, all the stakeholders, exactly what that grade represents when they are very aware of the knowledge and the skills. And then it prepares them for future learning. So when they go into the workforce, they know the expected outcomes and they know where they are. So like performance reviews and things like that we see in the world of work are really aligned to that. So that was the rationale behind the 80% and the 20% from our committee. And even though we were all different levels, we came to consensus and felt like that was really important for us to have that guide our work. So it doesn't come without some criticism, but we also have quite a bit of testimonials. And I just want to acknowledge that this is from the middle school, 6th grade. We do have 2 schools in our district, middle schools, that are they've already implemented a weighted system of, 80% summative or 20% formative. And another middle school is close to that, but they have a weighted system as well. And Anne, she's a 6th grade teacher. She just mentions that what's really helpful is that by moving to this 80-20 model, or actually 70-30 in that school, that it supports learning growth and accountability. It truly reflects what students have learned, as opposed to it just being a grade, a letter, if you will. And it really focuses on those formatives to build mastery. So they are aligning that formative work to the summative. Tara, a 6th grade ELA teacher and science teacher, acknowledges that there's more equitable grading practices now, more equitable within her grading practices. And also it truly reflects how well students have grasped the concepts, the skills, and the curriculum. And then Kathy Malone, again, that was my co-facilitator, 6th grade math and social studies teacher. She acknowledged that she was no longer a homework chaser, and that students truly understood, like there was transparency, and they knew what their grades represented and where to direct their efforts. And then also their parents were aware of that as well in the conversations that we've had. So those are a lot of the positives that came out of that weighted system. But again, it doesn't go without criticism.
Yeah, I'm tasked with the concerns, right? And before we get to those, we've thrown a lot of educator terms out here, and I think it's important to unpack those very quickly. Sure. To show some of the linkage here. It's a nice July summer night, and I'm optimistic. Many people online watching this, I think it's really important for them to understand a little bit about what this looks like. And so, I'm going to start with the targeted instruction, right? We know when we have targeted instruction and assessment, that formative assessments are actually going to provide that data for our educators to actually understand students' current proficiency levels. Where are they at this moment in time right now? And that actually helps enable all of our educators then to provide for student-specific needs. A summative assessment and proficiency, how do those relate? They're going to provide just this overall comprehensive evaluation of a student's final proficiency levels. What did they learn at the end of that unit, at the end of that semester, at the end of that term, and really demonstrates, shows that were they able to demonstrate mastery of learning over those intended outcomes. And all of this underlies the continuous improvement cycle that's constantly occurring with our students. And both the formative and the summative assessments really allow educators to reflect on their current instructional practices, refine their teaching practices, and help to, and that's going to help improve student outcomes, which is what everybody wants to do. So where are the concerns after hearing all that? Well, you have some here. This is not exhaustive, okay? These are just some that we wanted to just throw out there and acknowledge. And as we start to go through these, I'll just talk to maybe two of them that really relate to the targeted instruction, the continuous improvement. You know, the first one is that weighting made to value work, informative assessments. One of the things that we know in working with our educators, some who Montrine just talked about, and some who we haven't heard from, but we know anecdotally this is what they're working through. We know that the summative assessments do carry more weight. We know that the formative assessments still remain crucial for learning. They're going to give those practice, those feedback opportunities. We've all heard those examples from sports, you know, what counts, the day of the game and how they perform, all those practice sessions that they do to lead up to actual performing well. And so we know that this model is just going to encourage students to continue to engage in that overall learning process. That's another concern that we have up there. It might be a worry about the impact on student motivation if daily work is less important. Again, shifting to seeing formative assessments as a tool for growth, which is what we talked about, and preparation so that they can actually help demonstrate mastery. Our goal remains focused on promoting a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset for our students, and this type of formative and summative work helps to really promote that. So what are our plans for how to implement this so that we can measure everything that we're talking about? Well, up there again is just a diagram of kind of where we've already started some of this work. Over the summer, at the beginning of the summer, right at the end of the school year, we sent out a request to every single educator in our district, just asking, you know, who would like to be a part of this. So we've talked about early, and as Montrine mentioned, we already know we have 2 schools who are doing this at the middle school level. We know we have huge pockets of educators across the levels that are doing this work and have been doing this successfully. So we did get a response, and based on that response and based on what we're looking at, we are looking at some targeted schools to actually measure this. Some of them are going to be the schools that we've already talked about in terms of middle schools, and potentially also looking at individual educators where we can actually start to gather stakeholder feedback that includes how are parents viewing this, how are students viewing this, and what are educators saying about this. We'd also like to gather some quantitative data that actually potentially takes a look at the grades in Class A that's in this 80-20 framework as opposed to the grades in Class B that are not in that framework. Is there a difference in terms of total number of you know, A, B's, and C's as a growth model for student achievement? What does that look like? We don't know, and there may be, we have you know, our theories, but it'll be important to take a look at that data to see what is actually showing. We want to use that data to actually make informed decisions. We don't want to just go through this and say we're doing this because of all the things that we talked about, but also to have the data to back up that student achievement, student levels of proficiency continue to rise, and students are learning. They're able to continue to demonstrate that mastery. So those are some of the things that we'll be looking at in the fall pilot as we begin to develop that. So what does the future look like for this? Well, as Montrine talked about, we have 6 other subcommittees, and they continue to work. One of those subcommittees that I just want to highlight right now is our standards space subcommittee. That is at the elementary level only. It will remain at the elementary level. We are not looking to expand that outside of elementary. we know our elementary teachers have talked about standards-based grading for quite some time. And there is a lot of excitement and interest in this committee. And so we've already started some of that legwork with some of the building administration. And so we look forward to bringing back some information and discussion about what that standards-based grading could potentially look like. Again, we haven't started anything, but that's just one of the subcommittees. And then finally, that leads to a optimistic but also accountable implementation timeline. We're currently in July, so again, we've already been doing some of this work. Again, we hope to bring back to the board a presentation in spring on this committee and other committees potentially as well, but mostly focusing on data that we just talked about from the pilot. Professional development is going to be key here. It's important that the teachers who are not doing this, that they really understand how and what that looks like with their grade book and how to really set up formative and summative assessments. So we want to spend some time in August of 2026 doing that. And then potentially August 2027, you know, it may be a change in policy. It may just be a change in practice. We don't know yet. What we do know is that we'd like to make sure that we have some schools, some teachers, some levels that are ready to go so that we are achieving those levels of consistency that we're talking about right now in July of 2025. With that, we'll entertain questions and further discussion.
About Miss Jane.
Thank you. So I have a few questions here. I find this work obviously very interesting and exciting, but also I think we're at a phase and level that's a bit abstract. So it's hard for me to maybe fully appreciate some of the content that you shared with us today. For example, it's still not clear to me what the current challenges are that is the why behind this work. I think you guys understand it way more than me, but I felt like I had to fill in the blank in my head for it to make sense. I know you have slide 17 that kind of talks a little bit about maybe what some of the challenges may be, that if you could explain it in a way that those who are not in education would understand. Like, do teachers feel like their daily work is weighted more than the summative assessment, and therefore there's mixed messaging to the student that work should be considered or weighted higher than the summative assessment? Meaning, is there mixed messaging to students, or students not fully understanding that framework?
Yeah, I'll answer the first part and maybe in a quantitative data point, and then I'll let Montrine talk a little bit about it. Over 250. When we're sitting down with our with Rod Mack, who is our current Chief Technology Officer, and who is working with us on this because he's going to have to be an important part in this work. He mentioned that right now there's over 250 grade books in our system.
Okay.
Different grade books. So if you just let that sit in,
Okay.
there are over 250 ways that we are measuring student progress, valuing, showing how we're mastery learning from student A in one school to student B in another. And so he's excited about this work because he would like more than anything like we would to get that number down. That's way too many. So that's one measure that we've got that many just different forms of how we're valuing work, daily work, daily assessments that is inconsistent, sends the wrong message to students. Students know, they talk. If
Yes.
I got this chemistry teacher,
Yes.
and I have a passion for chemistry, but I know that this chemistry teacher values this as opposed to this other chemistry teacher. Well, I really, that's a B, and I know I worked hard for that B. I got an A here. Does that A mean the same?
Yeah.
We know with over 250 grade books that's happening.
That makes a lot of sense.
I know there's more. What would you like to share?
I could talk in looking at the big 7. So if you look at extra credit, right? If I teach, so I'm an English teacher, I taught high school English. If I teach English and I allow extra credit in my class, when students are wanting to improve their grade, but let's say there's another teacher in the same exact, English, like let's say freshman English, for example, that's what I taught previously, doesn't allow extra credit, well, that really provides an unfair advantage. So having those types of conversations, and I want to preface, our teachers work really hard and they want students to be successful, so I don't think there's any malicious intent whatsoever. They really are trying to provide opportunities, but I just think it's really important for us to step together, and our PLCs do that. We have professional learning communities, and that's a high school perspective, right? And I know our middle schools have teams, but also the power of the 0 or late work. If a student turns in an assignment late in one area and they deduct a certain percentage points, is that really based on what the student knows and is able to do, or is that also connected to behavior? So I think that's the challenge. Now, I know the criticism. Some teachers would say, well, we have to hold students accountable. So we have to find that balance. So that's just some of the examples that we see. And our schools have, I don't want to say that we haven't had those conversations and we're not closer to consistency, because we have. But I just think it's really important when we're looking at grades and feedback, making sure it's based on what students know and are able to do.
One of the concerns that's not up there, but that is really big at the high schools, is retakes.
Yep, I know that. I have a high schooler.
Yep, and we've got a whole committee dedicated to that, and we expect to bring out some practice recommendations on that. What we're educating our current educators on is that, before the default was always to say, well, I'm preparing them for college. Well, guess what? I've got a son, and gets retakes in college. So we know that there is value in making sure that students can demonstrate the mastery. You can take a driver's ed test as many times as you want. My daughter had to take it twice, and so she's good. The first time was not very exciting. That being said, we know that even with standardized tests, some of our high-stakes ACTs and SATs, you can take them more than once. There are very few, if any, things where you cannot retake over and over and over. The bar, the list goes on. And so that PD, that professional development, is going to be really important.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Those examples were helpful to me. Do you foresee then, at the end of this, it being something that's required or strongly recommended? Are these going to be guidelines, or how do you balance that with academic freedom? I know in higher education, that's what I struggle with, doing this type of work. So how do you see that?
Yeah, I think the first point, your first question is, it will be something that we will be requiring, and the way to do that is partnering with Rod Mack and our Chief Technology Officer to reduce that 250 grade books to where this is the grade book, and there's accountability in that piece. While also we value teacher autonomy in that classroom. They are the experts, and so some of that flexibility will come in which assignments and how they're categorized, formative and summative, and making sure that they still have that autonomy to designate what those assignments look like.
Thank you. And my last question is, I noticed the word equitable or equity come up a lot. And in my mind, I was also thinking parity, right? Mm-hmm. And so I just wanted to ask you, what are you thinking about when you're using the term equity in terms of equitable measures of formative and summative assessments? Like, what's going on in your mind when you're using that word?
You want to take that first, and
Well, I think it's making sure that all students, that they have access to and that they have the resources that they need so that they can be successful. And so that's where we're already having those conversations at the again, I have a high school perspective, but I know across K through 12, we're having those conversations to make sure that students have the resources that they need so that they can be successful. So if it takes a student longer, and I think this is the struggle, is we do have these timelines in high school or in education where we have to move to the next unit. And so time is a factor, and I'm gonna acknowledge that, right? Our teachers, our educators who are watching, but just making sure that if it takes a student longer, that they get the interventions that they need, the resources that they need, the support, so that they can demonstrate that they've learned that, even if it takes longer. So I think that's the piece. And just making sure that if we're gonna offer an extra credit opportunity, students may not take advantage of it, but at least we've agreed upon it. And it's related to the content and the skills at hand, as opposed to bringing in a tissue box or, something to that nature, which I think we've all addressed in education, which I'm glad to see.
Yeah, the only thing I would just add to that is current students' proficiency levels. It's important that instruction needs to be targeted, as we talked about, and making sure that we understand current proficiency levels of that child. Then the teacher can target their instruction to help student A in terms of what they actually need, and to help student B and what they actually need. And all of that falls under that lens of equity, because every single child is achieving at certain rates, and so the more we can provide that targeted instruction is going to be very important.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mr. Karubis.
No questions.
Okay. Ms. Bosdeck.
Hi. This is a very interesting topic, particularly as an educator. I think it's really interesting. And I can't really wrap my head around the enormity of it when we're talking about pre-K through secondary education. So there's a lot here. I'm wondering if, for the benefit of any community members who might be watching and might say, if we're going to implement an 80-20 system, if my student gets 100% on all of their tests but doesn't do any homework, how could they possibly end up with a B in that class? So I'm wondering if you could maybe explain how and why this recommendation to go with this weighting is beneficial for students actually demonstrating the mastery of the skills, in addition the listed skills and the soft skills.
I think that's the challenge when you talk about the soft skills, because that is our ongoing challenge in schools, where you have, formative work, right? The daily work, and we have students, for whatever reason, may or may not choose to do it, but then when it comes to a larger assessment, they're able to be successful. And I'm not going to mince words, like that is the struggle, but if I look at what do I want students to know, learn, and be able to do, the learning outcomes, right? Then if they're able to demonstrate that they've reached proficiency, then that should be acceptable. But I will be completely transparent. That is a struggle for educators, because we do feel like we have to teach and hold students accountable. But sometimes students come in, they have different levels of background knowledge, they have different lived experiences, and that really contributes to the overall learning. And so I think that's the challenge. But I just think it's really important for us. And if I could also add, if we look at our students and if we look at their home lives, there are some of our students who do not have the resources. Their families don't have the ability to pay for tutoring.
Right.
We're a district where a lot of families pay for tutoring and get those outside supports, and a lot of our students don't have that. And so I think we have to take all of that into consideration as well.
It gets to the topic of what do grades mean and how do we want to communicate learning, which, like you said, we could be here all night. I've sat in conferences as the administrator in the room where the parent said, so wait a second, if Johnny had just done his homework, he would have received an A. One, the parent recognized that, and then was getting all over Johnny. But what was the challenging piece was the educator just nodding their head saying, yeah, that's if Johnny had just done that, he would have been fine. And so how do you communicate making sure that does not work? Johnny demonstrated mastery, knew exactly what was going on, what is important. And so I think, you know, for the hundreds of people that are listening right now, right, it's important to make sure that we know at the end of the day, we want our teachers, I had a teacher tell me this, they didn't get into education to be a bean counter, to actually count these points, right? They got into education because we want to see students to be able to learn that continuous improvement cycle, and being able to showcase that. And so the shift, unfortunately, has really been on so much on what grades mean. We've seen it at the higher ed level, where the entire topic nationwide of grades, inflation of grades and what that's mean, we've just seen this heavy reliance on that. And so it's really going to be important that we stress, and this will take us, you know, back to our why are we doing this? And we want to make sure our students are more, have those consistent grading practices, so that when they leave here, they had just like the parents earlier talked about, the new administrator hire, they were proud of their children being in this district, and that's not easy.
I really appreciate the explanation, and I think that for anyone listening now or in the future will also appreciate some of that thoughtful discussion and explanation, because it is a struggle. And I kept thinking in my head, reading through these, students earn grades. Students aren't gifted grades. Students aren't given grades, ideally, at least from my perspective. Students earn grades. Mm-hmm. And this is a way that maybe could reflect that better going forward. So thank you.
Ms. Deming.
A lot. It is a lot. Slide 14, basically the 80-20. Can you just share how did we, is that a national, are you seeing that from a national perspective as people, I mean, as districts and educators have grappled with this? Where did we come with from the research with the 80-20?
Talk about it.
Sure. That subcommittee looked at existing practices within our own district, and then educational research, recommendations, and we just felt, we felt like it couldn't be more than 80%, if that makes sense. And so looking at neighboring school districts, Plainfield, 203, which they've since revised a little bit as well. Those were really the common percentages that we saw. And so, but we also felt like it was really important, like there's an existing school that's like 70-30. So having those conversations, but that being the guardrails for staff to look at that, because we want students, we're always asking in like our professional learning communities, what do we want students to know and learn and be able to do? And then what are we going to do if they don't know it? And so that really does allow us to determine what it drives our instruction. So what's that targeted instruction? What are those targeted interventions and supports that we want to provide? So that's really why we landed there, based on educational research of, you know, Joe Feldman, Thomas Gusky, Rick Wormelli, just educational research in the field. And there's many others who have recommended those percentages.
We also have a middle school that's been doing this for 5 years, school-wide at 80-20.
Yep. And
so we're really excited to tap into them and just to see how did they roll that out, what did that look like. I know, Montrine, you shared there were members of your committee that wanted to go 90-10.
Yes.
That wanted to go even higher. So we've got, you know, it's pretty interesting. Again, grading puts people in their corners. So
for me, because it's very conceptual, sometimes I need sort of the, you know, what does it look like as the,
Sure.
you know, with the meat. So can you share with me, does this for the summative, are we expecting that whatever the course timeline is, whatever the quarter or whatever the actual area of study is, that regardless of where I am, which school I'm at, that exact same summative assessment would be given?
Yes. So I took us back to slide 13 to just give us a visual. So if you could, sort of envision on the right there in the green, all of those things set up through our electronic grade book. Once they're entered, they're automatically going to go into that 80%. Currently at the high schools, we have final exams that are weighted at 20%. They would be part of that 80%. We would not carve out something separately for a final summative. It would be included in that 80%.
And we would expect that they would be exactly the same. Is that?
Yeah, not only expected, but making sure that it's set up that it's again going back to that one grade book in the in our electronic. And we've talked with our CTO Rodney Mack. He's very confident that this would not be a challenge for us.
Slide 18, we talked about stakeholder feedback. I think it was on slide 18. Let's see. Yeah, when we're as far as the pilot is concerned, are we going to? Can you remind me who encompasses the stakeholders? I may have missed something, but are students going to be?
Yeah, there's going to be three major groups here. Our students are definitely going to be important. I think it's taking the time to survey them, ask them specifically, what were some of the challenges with this, and making sure that we understand exactly some of their thought processes in terms of how they're ranking something, maybe on a Likert scale type of question. Our parents are going to be extremely important to hear everything from their understanding of it to stress levels at home.
Yes.
What did you see at home? We want to, because we don't want this to, be out of the bounds of what we would call normal stress that's good for student growth, to help them progress, to help them make good decisions. And then finally is our educators, the ones that have been doing this a while, and also some that are just starting this. What are some of their challenges they're seeing? We know that this is not going to be something that we're trying to get perfect on, but we know that we have inconsistency. So can we move toward being more consistent in a manner that's reflective throughout the district?
And just two last more comments. Board Member Fosdick, I definitely understood, as she mentioned, students who get 100% on all of the summative, but some of those formative areas didn't. And I was actually thinking along the lines of those students who were really strong on the formative side, but have struggled from a test-taking viewpoint, but have consistently been whatever the class looks like, but have somehow indicated to that educator that they have an understanding and they master, as far as during the formative session, the topic of discussion, but have strong concerns regarding that summative, just because of tension and stress and things like that. So I'm certain some of those conversations have been had. So I appreciate hearing more on both sides as you guys grapple, because I know those will come up.
Yeah, we've started having them already because also because our educators did not get into this be bean counters, they also did not get into this become assessment writers. And there are many times that sometimes we have to take a stronger look at the type of assessments that we're giving. We just starting with a new license with PAIR that is going to be utilizing opportunities for our educators where they can take and write good assessment questions that are non-biased, that are seeking to look at what you're actually trying to measure and all of those, so that we can take some of that stress off our educators, take some of that work off their plate, so we can have better outcomes as well.
And then I guess just the final comment that I have, certainly, as you said, we're trying to prepare our students. So regardless of what that next level of education, and it does not necessarily need to be a four-year college, it may not be two-year college, but students, as we all move into whatever profession we are, there is some type of educational enhancement that you have to do. And you're going to have to do it. So whatever that expectation is, so, whether if I had just done the homework, whatever that next level is, there's going to be an expectation that you have to do and accomplish whatever they're asking you to accomplish. And so we're beginning to set that stage. And if part of it is the, formative, then you may see that at whatever next level you're moving to as well. So thank you. Look forward to continued conversation on this.
Ms. Gentz.
Yeah, thank you both, honestly, for this wonderful, very informative presentation. This is such a huge, enormous scope. So I really do appreciate all the work that everyone is putting into it. And as the parent of a child who saw her grade get lowered by a couple because she didn't do the homework, it is a lesson learned, speaking to Ms. Deming's point. So, sometimes it can be a positive where moving forward, they realize, you know what, this is absolutely vital too. And I appreciate, honestly, the points you made, Dr. Lee, because I think sometimes when we, parents hear, the community hears, we're doing this, we're looking to go to this set structure, you worry that it becomes this cookie cutter education. So I'm so glad you spoke to how this actually helps you even more deal with a child as an individual and see where their strong suits are and where, they may need more help to help every student excel, which I know you said on several slides. So I just wanted to say how much I appreciated that. And if you do not have a huge answer for me right now with what I'm about to ask, I understand, because I know we're on the summative, formative talk. But the IEP 504 multilingual, are you able to speak at all to what you're kind of looking at, working towards with that?
Yeah, I don't want to say too much because I want
Right.
to keep people coming back.
Absolutely.
But what we're really looking at is how to make sure that going back to think about those plans and the supports that are offered through a 504, are they purposeful and actually helping meet their needs in a consistent basis. So many times, we sometimes treat, unintentionally that, well, they've got the supports, they know what they're doing, without actually looking at those across the board. So our new assistant superintendent for student services, Dr. Igo, she's excited about this work. I'm not going to take her thunder, but she has talked many times about how do we raise levels of achievement for all students. And so that is something that again, when seeing this, that's exactly the mindset that we're looking for.
Yeah.
How do we raise levels of achievement for all students,
Yes.
including our most, many would agree, our most significant learners that need that support.
Yes. No, thank you so much, honestly. I love hearing that. And I hope for all the parents that are watching or not, or community members and may watch this, I know there's been a lot of concern with 504 parents, IEP parents, so thank you for addressing that a little bit, and everyone can stay tuned then for more information on that. But no, that was it. Thank you so much.
Mr. Rising.
So just for clarification, did I hear you say this was just for, as far as the formative summative grading, just for elementary, or is it across K-12?
We're primarily looking at middle and high school. The elementary, they're going to be looking at standards-based grading. So that'll be having this potentially, right? Having potentially those standards coming out, and I don't want to speak to that too much because that'll be a totally separate. But it naturally will lead into some of these formative and summative assessments that are occurring already at both middle and high.
And then did you say we've already been doing it at the elementary for a couple of years? Standards-based
There are some
grading?
formative and summative assessments that's happening at all 3 levels, absolutely.
Could I get the names of those schools and how it is impacted, how long we've been doing it? I want to see how it's impacted our growth at those schools.
Can we hold off for a second here? I think we need clarity on your question.
Yeah.
Because you were asking about formative, you were asking about, I think how it's being heard is standards-based grading at the elementary level. Can you please ask your question again?
So are we doing standards-based grading at any elementary schools currently?
No.
Okay.
You see why I wanted to ask?
Thank
Yes.
you, Dr. Taylor.
Yeah, because I'm really struggling with this a lot. Primarily for all the reasons you mentioned on slide 17. But if you go to slide 10, we have very different learners across our district. And when we're setting an 80-20 formative summative, we are automatically setting up kids for failure, in my opinion. There are kids that their homework, their extra credit sustains their grade. There are some kids that have test anxiety. I fear we are creating not a more equitable system. I fear we're creating a more inequitable system. As a parent of 2 graduates, I say the best thing I can teach my kids is accountability and responsibility. It's the best thing I can teach them. Not what grades they get. Accountability, responsibility. Because eventually, if they go off to college or if they go into the workforce, I'm not going to be there for them. And they have to be accountable and responsible. Standards-based grading is really, I'm sorry, it is kind of saying, yes, you are building up to summative. I get that point. We want to help them build that growth. Totally understand that. But when you are placing less weight on the formative, less weight on certain things, we're losing that accountability and responsibility, in my opinion. You know, when we look at grading, you know, how does grading or weighting of grading align to proficiency or IAR or iReady or SAT? It really doesn't, right? It's what they retain. It's what they learn. So then I get into how does grading impact or affect learning? It really doesn't. If a kid gets an A in a class, the kid that got a C might have learned more in that class, right? But we're setting things up that certain things aren't as important, and I feel we're putting too much pressure and too much weight on the summative. And because learning is constant. Learning is not just what you build up to. It's constant. So to me, it's not mastering of the standards. We're trying to build the growth, but we're forgetting everything that comes before or in the middle. I'm really going to have to see some more research on this because there have been a lot of great ideas in education that have been wonderful and some not so wonderful.
Yeah.
And I'm very concerned about this because I think we're losing the accountability, the responsibility piece. Because to me, as a parent of a student that's getting taught in our school, everything matters all the time. And it should matter all the time. Doesn't matter how much money I have a parent to put them in tutoring or anything else like that. Everything matters all the time. And I'm not a fan of this standards-based grading because I think it is doing a disservice to a lot of our kids, so.
So let me just, we are not talking about standards-based grading tonight.
Well, formative, summative, it's still the same.
2 different things.
Well,
2 very different things, and I want to be very clear about this. Currently, across our district, teachers are already doing formative summative. The issue is that they're doing it in different ways. You may have in one classroom, teacher A is doing formative 10% and summative 90%. Teacher B, 50% formative, 50% summative. Teacher C, 20%, 80%.
I guess what I'm saying is I need to understand the rationale of why formative is weighted so much less than summative. That's what I need to understand.
But currently, we have a situation where we are across the board in the school district. And so therefore, you have a student who can be at school A taking chemistry, and their formatives are only 30%. Chemistry in teacher B in school B, it's 20%. We have to get an equilibrium with regards to our formative and summative and across our district. I'll end by saying this. The work of grading and reporting is not easy. The reason I asked this work to be done over a time period of 3 to 5 years is because of the questions that people are asking tonight. Many subcommittees will be coming forward back to bring us information. But this is the beginning of the process, formative and summative. And understand, across our district, we're already doing this. If you were to talk to your children, they would tell you, if you go to back to school nights, teachers are going to talk about their grades and what summative and formatives are like and how much they count. And then Ms. Johnson was talking about the fact that you have some teachers who give extra credit and some who don't. We have to bring all of this into alignment so that we have more similarity across our district than dissimilarity.
I think you're also in a good place, Mr. Rising. If Kathy Malone was here tonight, she would talk about she was at that exact same place 4 years ago. Exactly what you just said. And so it's a process, and she is an educator, and our current educators, this is that cycle of continuous learning and improvement. So,
and I'm not saying that I'm against it. I'm just saying I need to learn more.
Yep.
Because I'm having a hard time making sense of it. So I appreciate you explaining it. I appreciate you going through the subcommittees and all the work that you're doing towards it. I just need to understand it better as we move forward.
Yep, we want to provide a long runway for this, and that's what we're trying to do.
Did you say that Kathy Malone now is doing the 80-20?
She's 70-30,
Oh, okay.
And she's on this. She's partnering with
Right.
Montrain.
Yeah. Well, I thank the board members for all of their thoughtful questions and comments. I mean, we all studied this presentation ahead of time, and we're all scratching our head like, I really don't know. I mean, it just highlights how complex this topic is, and for those of us who are not educators, really a thoughtful discussion about how to help our students be successful and what does success mean is on the forefront of all of our brains. So the second you bring up grading, it brings up fire alarms and parents and teachers, and it's like, it's not broke, don't fix it. Well, we're on a path of always continuous improvement. We are a high achieving district, but there is always room for improvement. And the inconsistency across the schools and things is very troubling, and you hear it, a lot. And that's not right. Like, we need to look at how to fix that. So I applaud the effort. I do recognize, and listening to these questions and this discussion just reinforced how much I don't know about this subject, and how many different perspectives there could be on what is the right answer. And I really think it was very helpful to have that vision in front of everyone. This is what we're seeking, but also to look at industry information and not go so much from a gut feeling or a previous practice kind of perspective, but also look at what research says. And So I'm thankful for the journey that we're on, and I don't know what the right answer is, but I think that it is definitely something that we need to continue to pursue. One of the questions I had is for the trials in the fall. You said that you have classes or grades or classes that are currently already doing 80/20 and some that aren't, right? So you're going to have a mix of...
Correct. Yeah, we want to tap into the ones that have done it well, in the sense that they've been doing it a while and they're achieving well. And then we also want to take a look at some who are interested in doing this, and those who aren't, that we can just still pull their data.
Yeah. Did you get enough volunteers to do this?
I would always say we always want more than enough. So I would say we have enough interest where we know that going at some of the middle schools is going to be really helpful for us. I think at the high school level, and Montrine can help me with this, I think that piece about retakes is going to be really important to have a really good understanding of what's a strong retake policy. So because right away for some of our educators, that concern about the weighting on that summative, how does that retake then factor into this?
Yeah. Well, I also appreciate the teachers and staff that are like, I don't want to be a cookie cutter, like, this is the formula and this is how you have to do it. It's like, but there is freedom in delivery and unique helping each student that needs different things in different areas. And that's where the teaching skill and strength, I think, comes from personally. But yeah. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Our next topic is a presentation from Lisa Berry and Jeannie Dyna regarding communications.
Good evening, President Donahue, board members, and Dr. Talley. Thank you for the opportunity to present our communications update tonight. Joining me this evening is Assistant Director of Community Relations, Jeannie Dyna. Tonight's agenda includes a review of our work related to Strategic Plan Priority 3, which includes significant progress on our volunteer program. We'll discuss our involvement in the Safer, Stronger 204 referendum and communication of the projects that followed its successful passing. We are excited to share upgrades to our websites and communications platforms, and we'll look at some of our anticipated work for the 25-26 school year. Our work in the communications department primarily focuses on Strategic Plan Priority 3. In the 2024-25 school year, we continued several of our ongoing initiatives, including Parent University, Coffee and Conversation, and School Spotlight videos. We supported the superintendent's engagement in the community through connections with the Rotary Club of Naperville, the Naperville Area Chamber of Commerce, and other community groups. We continued to support and promote PTA events and activities through our weekly email updates and social media. We have also invited the Indian Prairie Parents Council and PTAs to host an informational table at our Parent University events. Additionally, we've expanded our sponsorship revenue and increased our partnerships this year. During this annual update, we'd like to share our partners and sponsors and again express our gratitude for their generous contributions. Typically, we have a slide filled with all the partner and sponsors' logos, but due to the extraordinary work of Jeannie Dyna, we reached nearly 100 partners and sponsors this year. We weren't able to add all their logos, but instead have listed them here. We appreciate the generosity and collaboration with all our partners and sponsors and their continued support of our schools and the district. Now I'd like to turn it over to Jeannie to highlight a few of our sponsors and the impact their contributions have had on our work.
First, the Indian Prairie Educational Foundation was the presenting sponsor for the Mental Health and Wellness Symposium. We also partnered with 5 neighboring districts to expand the reach of the symposium. Those districts included East Aurora, West Aurora, Naperville 203, Oswego, and Wheaton-Warrenville. The collaboration of all our sponsors and partners allowed us to bring mental health and wellness resources to over 600 attendees. We are looking forward to continuing these partnerships with the 2026 Mental Health and Wellness Symposium on Saturday, March 7th at Mattia Valley High School. Next, we'd like to thank Rival 5 for sponsoring our first annual safety contest. Their support allowed us to offer prizes at all 3 levels and help to increase participation in the program while engaging our community in understanding the importance of everyone being an active part of helping keep our schools safe. Finally, our new partner, Green State Credit Union, generously sponsored our district-wide volunteer program, which allowed us to expand the program this year. With the support, we've continued to grow opportunities for families and community members to be actively involved in our schools. Across our schools, parents, guardians, family members, and community members volunteer their time to support a wide range of activities, including PTA, IPPC, boosters, fine arts, LMC programs, and more. To become a volunteer in our schools, individuals complete an application and consent form available on our volunteer page of our website in both English and Spanish. The application process is managed through the district office, and once the volunteer is approved, all forms are securely stored in the Raptor system. We love recognizing our volunteers throughout the year. Each month, we feature the schools and volunteers with the highest volunteer hours in our district's weekly e-newsletter. In December, we hosted an open house with hot chocolate and cider to thank and celebrate our volunteers. And in May, we honored volunteers during the Superintendent Brunch, where we presented 3 awards: the Volunteer of the Year, the Most Involved Volunteer, and the Most Involved School. Each recipient received a $1,000 award from Green State Credit Union to be used in their school. Last year's honorees included Sarah Stevens from Neuqua Valley as Volunteer of the Year, Catherine Izzo from Springbrook with 355 hours, and Springbrook Elementary as the most involved school with an impressive 8,884 hours logged. We continue to track volunteer engagement through Raptor. This helps us measure impact, celebrate success, and plan for continued growth of the program. We are looking forward to expanding the program with additional promotional opportunities. One way we're able to highlight the district's volunteer community engagement is by looking at the types of volunteer affiliations across our schools. This chart shows the wide range of individuals who volunteer in our buildings, from mothers, fathers, grandparents, to aunts, uncles, siblings, and even business partner and community members. It's a powerful reminder that support comes from all corners of our community.
In the 2024-25 school year, the 2024-25 school year began during our Safer, Stronger 204 referendum campaign. Leading up to the vote in November, we hosted nearly 100 community informational meetings, ran a targeted digital and robust social media campaign, mailed multiple pieces directly to households, and produced a series of engaging informational videos. These coordinated efforts not only helped secure the referendum's passage with nearly 74% voter approval, they also earned national recognition with a 2025 Golden Achievement Award from the National School Public Relations Association. Thanks to the support of our community, referendum-funded construction projects are well underway, including new secure vestibules at 11 elementary schools, renovations to the Waubonsie Valley Auditorium, and updated flooring at multiple sites, just to name a few. Over the past month, we've been documenting this work, and we're excited to share a short video showcasing the progress made so far. I want to acknowledge Emily Bulger, our media communications producer, for her excellent work in compiling this video. We'll be sharing this video on social media and adding it to our website tomorrow. Our new websites offer even greater engagement for our families and community. We now have enhanced capabilities to share more dynamic content, including photo galleries and videos on any page of the site. Additional features such as page pop-ups, templated news items, and more detailed tagging of schools help to support crisis communications, allowing us to share timely, critical updates more effectively. In addition to Google Translate, the new website platform includes AI-powered translations in our top 10 languages, helping us better serve our multilingual families. And of course, we're meeting all of our accessibility requirements to ensure every user, regardless of ability, can navigate and access important information. This is supported through an embedded website accessibility checker that doesn't allow website editors to post content if it doesn't meet accessibility requirements. In August, we will launch the new IPSD app. In addition to providing helpful information to families, it also enhances two-way communication across the district. By encouraging families and staff to download the district app, we're making it easier than ever to stay connected. The app supports communication with all stakeholder groups, from teachers and coaches to club sponsors, activity leaders, and internal teams. Messages sent through the app are automatically translated into each user's preferred language, removing barriers and ensuring everyone receives timely, understandable communication. Looking ahead to next year, our focus remains on keeping the community informed and engaged. We'll continue providing regular updates on construction progress as referendum projects move forward. You'll also see further updates to our website and continued promotion of our communications app to expand its use. In addition, we'll support communication efforts around the superintendent search. Finally, our 2025 communications survey revealed a mismatch between the social media platforms our stakeholders say they use and our actual follower counts. While many respondents reported using Facebook and Instagram, our follower numbers on those platforms remain low. In contrast, we have a high number of followers on X, despite fewer respondents indicating they use it. We will explore this discrepancy and review our social media strategy to ensure we're effectively reaching and engaging our audiences across all platforms. It's an exciting time for our district, and we're committed to transparent, accessible, and effective communications every step of the way. Thank you.
All right, I'll start with Mr. Rising.
You're awesome. That's it. Thanks.
All right, Ms. Gens.
I agree, but I'm just going to add more to that. As we all know, I come from a very strong PTA background before I became a school board member, so I love seeing how you guys are bringing school PTAs in more to like the parent universities, inviting them to be able to have a table there. I loved on slide 6 seeing the breakdown of all the different volunteers. It's fun to see, and I actually I'm amazed with some of these schools, especially where like community members were huge volunteers. My question with that though is, when you've signed your volunteer form, you've been accepted, can you volunteer then at any school?
Yes, any school in the district you could volunteer.
Excellent. So hopefully everyone listening to will think of that as well. So I love how you guys have really made this robust volunteer program, because I think the question has always been, how do we get more volunteers? How do we get more, not just parents, but community members involved, grandparents, other family members. So thank you for all of that work, and I just want to reiterate the absolutely phenomenal job you did communicating the referendum, and you absolutely deserve that award, and the fact that we had such a high yes vote is 100% because of your efforts. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. I also want to acknowledge what you said about the volunteer program. I don't know if you're aware, but every volunteer application that comes in through the district, Jeannie reviews it. So there's a tremendous amount of work on the back end that goes into the volunteer program. So I just really wanted to acknowledge the hard work that goes in behind the scenes.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
All of the public,
yes.
Everything that you see.
No, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I think sometimes we all just assume, it was just reviewed. Yeah, sure. Like almost went through a copier, and it's like, yeah, it's fine. So no, that does not surprise me that Jeannie reviews them meticulously. So thank you.
Could I ask a question? I apologize.
Yes.
Regarding the volunteer stuff, I was surprised some schools had way more volunteer hours than I would have thought they would have, and I was surprised some schools had a lot less volunteer hours than I thought they would have. Do you know, or Dr. Talley or Dr. Lee, are these numbers shared? I mean, do they discuss this like with their PTA, or do the principals see these numbers? I mean, obviously I would think they would know them, right? But
yes, and it all depends if we have a new secretary come in, or different training, different ways that they're being logged in when they come in. They may just be logged in as a visitor. So instead of a volunteer, so we're working with training again this summer of all of our new staff members. It could be just that simple, is hitting the visitor to the volunteer. Because we did have over 33,000 visitors to our schools this year. That's not including all the volunteers we had.
Ms. Bosdick. Sorry. Oh, were you doing it? No worries. I wasn't paying attention.
Thank you for continuing to be the dynamic duo, leading the charge for getting all of our communique out to the community. I am super excited to see the volunteer data, because I firmly believe we do have a community that wants to do all that we can to help in our schools. So thank you for logging that and sharing that, and Jeannie reviewing all of those so that we can get community members into our schools in a safe and secure way, with the beautiful secure vestibules that we have going on in the Raptor system.
And they are screened through Raptor.
Yes.
We don't do a complete background check, but they are for sex offender.
Yes, absolutely. important to note. But thank you for all of your work. It is much appreciated. And all of those kudos that are being shared are well deserved.
Thank you.
Ms. Deming?
That volunteer chart is phenomenal, and it's such a demonstrative visual way that just really speaks volumes. Sometimes, you can't see things in words, but that pictorial graphic really, really makes such a huge difference. So kudos not only to seeing that volunteer, but coming up with the idea to show it that way, because I think it just tells so much. And the partners and sponsorship, that really speaks to me, being involved in the foundation side at higher education. Your partnership and working in duality with our foundation and helping to drive so much of that phenomenal financial as well as time insert into our schools and our district means so much. So just a fantastic job. Keep up the great work. And like Board Member Jens again said, thank you for all you did with the referendum. It was fantastic. And we're able to showcase all this because of all the work that you did at the end of last summer, fall, and winter. So thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Karubis?
On the 2024 referendum stuff, kudos to you. You've far exceeded my expectations on the website, on the video, on what you're doing. I love the summary. I think it's very easy to access on the website. You kind of condense it. This is what we plan on spending. This is where we're at, and these are the projects. I mean, that's as simple as, but as informative as we can be. And we went from having the very high praise and work on passing the referendum, and community members are seeing the work being done, and now they can easily see what's being done, what's going to be done, kind of how far we are at in the process. So I know that I've had in the past kind of wanted to speed things up a little bit on the communication front, but you just blew right past what I wanted to get done. So awesome job.
Thank you. It was one of those challenging situations where, like, hurry up and wait. Like, we had to wait until the work started before we could show the work. So now we're very excited to be communicating that to the public and letting them see all the outcome of the referendum.
Perfect. Thanks.
Ms. Jane?
I like the phrase of the dynamic duo, because you guys are. And, we can do a lot of great things, but people will not know about them unless it's communicated effectively and in a timely fashion. And I think everything you showed today and really reflects our district so well in terms of the work being done and the partnerships being made. I was looking at slide number 4, and I was reflecting on maybe 4 years ago when it was my first presentation as a board member, hearing about our community partnerships, and that list, and we only had logos on that slide, and I remember that. And so to see over 100 organizations that we are now partnering with is extraordinary work. And with Block 59, I think we recruited some more partnerships. So this is it seems like just the beginning. We may have multiple slides with names very soon. So very exciting. Very excited about that. I also echo board members' appreciation of slide number 6, kind of delineating for us, well, who are these volunteers and why are they in our buildings? And it's so lovely to see aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters and step-parents. I mean, we don't necessarily think about them as being our profile of a volunteer, but it sure is nice to see that affiliation. And I hope the community can look at this and be proud of the work that's being done. Again, I just want to also compliment on number 7. the communication around the referendum. I don't, if I'm out in the community, people still talk about the way we communicated information about the referendum, it being fact-driven, data-driven, our intent being clear, and to see that move forward with the referendum work. And it just, again, it builds trust, and that's exactly the work we're doing. It's reflecting the work we're doing. So I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Really amazing work.
I appreciate that very much. I also want to reiterate something Matt Shipley said back during the referendum, and this work doesn't happen by one person or one department. It's the work that's being done in our schools every day, and our community sees that and the value of the education that we're bringing to the community. So I think it's really a, an effort among many that passed this referendum.
Well, what can I say after hearing all those compliments? Honestly, the referendum was phenomenal, and I agree, it was a team effort, but communications really did knock it out of the park with all of I also get community members saying, maybe we need to borrow them for my XYZ or whatever, because it was so impressive and comprehensive. The community partners also, that is like phenomenal growth, and thank you for doing that. I know that that's not easy, and having those discussions with all these different groups or whatever, and even in the giving report that we approved tonight, what was it, Shake Shack or whatever gave out all those cards. It was just incredible what we have seen recently, and it was something that we did want to see improve, but this was like an explosive improvement. So thank you so much for working on that, and just all of the partnership that I've seen. I also love the slide with the volunteer hours, because I also think our schools are pretty competitive. They're going to look at that and go, oh, I'm going to make sure everybody's registered when they come in my school, because I also saw you gave out awards at the end of the year that it was a nice chunk of money for the school to use in their improvements and things. So it's very thankful for the work that you're doing, and also for this video was great to see that update, because I know we've been all posting different things on different social media to try and promote. They are working in a lot of our buildings with all sorts of improvements. So thank you so much, and I look forward to a continued successful year this coming year. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any legislative items? No. All right. I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned.